Yo, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Hope you're all having a great day today and we're all doing well. Before we go into this video though, if you are new and you do go on to enjoy, be sure to subscribe and drop a like on the video. Now in this video I would actually like to talk about a brand new trick that was found in Rainbow Six Siege. Now I'm not sure who the original finder of this trick actually is. I did read that some people are saying that this was shown in a Coconut Bra video recently as well, but the person I actually seen this clip from is by Japai. I will have their YouTube channel and Twitter linked in the description if you'd like to check them out and go support them. But just be aware, other people have done this before them as well, but this is the clip I'm going to be using to sort of talk about and analyze it because I think it shows it off very well, especially in a competitive setting. Also, this is the post where the developers have actually gave a reply about the entire trick, so I'm going to use this one specifically for this example. So taking a look at this clip by them, as you can see they are attacking CCTV cache on Clubhouse, doing the standard wall breach, but they're doing it in a very different way. When you're usually attacking this wall, you usually, play a Thatcher if he's in play, use a Kali, try to get a Twitch drone through the drone hole or another route, especially now that it can jump. Maybe use a Flores or someone goes below, either Zofia or Ash or anyone with nades, or IQ smart ping it and then someone goes below and shot it. There's always different ways to try and counteract the bandits on this wall. When it gets a bit harder, you get the Cade charges, which sometimes sit by the drone hole and the other side, so they're very separate, so it's quite hard, especially to get Cade charges off that wall if you don't have a Thatcher, for example, which then leads to people more so playing Maverick, especially when it comes to this attack, basically because he's probably the best operator to try and counteract this wall. Obviously, because Maverick cannot be countered by Cade or Bandit, so obviously you can do the Maverick trick or make a whole line of sight for the feet, so you can just, see and shoot people as they're walking past as well. But what you see here is a brand new trick which is actually came alongside Osa, and what this is basically doing is using an Ace charge and an Osa shield, allowing the Ace charge to actually have an explosion range which touches the wall but not physically touching the wall enough for it to be affected by the electricity, allowing it to actually make a hole in the wall. Now many of you guys looking at this might think it's like a bug or exploit and they'll probably patch it out, but we actually got a reply from Mello, who is part of the Ubisoft development team, actually one of the game's designers themselves, come out and actually say, we've seen it, problem is it's doing what it's supposed to do. The canister is on a non-electrified surface, the detonation makes a hole. Heavy utility costs for small opening, but still something we'll keep an eye on. We'll implement restrictions if it becomes an issue. So here we actually have a comment from a game designer themselves, basically saying that this is actually an intentional thing. They didn't go out their way to do it, but the game's working as intended. The Osa shield is a soft surface, it isn't electrified, it doesn't destroy teammate gadgets, it's doing what it's supposed to do. So placing an Osa shield here and then placing Ace charge on it is actually doing what the game is designed to do. It is working as intended of how this game is meant to function. But then we got to look at the competitiveness of this, and is this fair? As far as I'm aware, I don't know what defenders they had on that team, but as you can see they do have a Cade, so I'm going to assume that they weren't running a Bandit, and this was probably two Electroclaws either side, which is arguably the best way to hold this wall. It's the safest way, it's much easier than mute jammers and Bandit charges. So with the operators they're bringing, they could have done this normally with the Twitch, but that's not guaranteed. This way they were actually guaranteed to at least make a hole in the wall. Now, do we see this as fair? We can look at it in some way. Maverick, for example, could be brought along to this site and make this same hole that they're making with the same operators on defense and still not be countered by it. And I guess that's seen as fair because obviously there's actually really no counter to Maverick. The entire counter to Maverick is just shooting him really. And they could have done this exact same thing with Maverick and had the exact same outcome. Granted, a lot more safer the way they're doing it. Like I said, if you're playing Maverick, you could have been killed doing this. But this way with Ace and Osa is much more safer because the explosion, takes out the whole wall at once. Whereas Maverick, you got to make the holes individually along the way around and you can be shot by the time you're finished it. So this is definitely much more safer than Maverick, but it still has the same outcome which you can do. There's still electricity on the wall, but they're still making holes, whether they've done this with this trick that we're showing or they've done it with Maverick. So then we've got to look at, right, this could be done outside of this trick, so it's technically not a broken trick because this can still be done with an operator intended to do something like this. but is it fair to actually allow these operators to do that when they technically weren't intended to do this? Ace was never intended to be able to open walls that had electricity on them. That was Maverick. So should Ace actually be allowed to do this when bringing another operator along to do it? Is it fair to say that yes, it is fair that Ace is able to do this because he's not only using a third of his utility for a tiny hole, you know, a Selma can actually make a bigger hole than that, but due to the circumstance of how they're using it, it's only made a small one. So they used a third of his utility on a tiny hole, plus half of Osa's utility just getting destroyed to make that hole. So can we say that this is actually a fair trade-off for this to be kept in the game? Do you think it's fair that Ace gets to use a third of his utility and half of Osa's utility to make such a tiny hole? Or do you think this newfound trick is actually a bit too unfair, and even though it's using quite a decent chunk of utility that could be used elsewhere, do you think that this is too strong? And honestly, I'm kind of split when I come to this. First of all, I think it's really cool that this can happen. I think this is, you know, what makes Siege is that you can do stuff like this and you can find new ways to open a wall, and I do think it's very cool. You know, you're using two operators, you're mix and matching their gadgets and utility to find a new, fresh way to open up a wall. But on the other hand, do I think it is a bit unfair because there's literally zero counter to this, and you could argue that the defenders have done like a lot by using the Cade charges in specific locations, trying to, you know, look for Twitch drones and stuff like that, only to get countered by this. Or then you could argue that, you know, this is a fine thing and the defenders could then just bring a mute so the Selma doesn't detonate. You could argue that. So there's a lot of things to take into consideration here. You could also argue that, yeah, this is fine, just leave this in because you can do it with Maverick, and the way they're doing it actually uses more utility than Maverick. So honestly, they could say it is a less efficient Maverick because you're using more utility and you're requiring two operators to do it, and maybe not everyone wants to play those two operators. So then you could argue that, yeah, this is actually fine to keep in the game because it's a less efficient way of doing Maverick's job. Then you could argue that actually no, this is a safer way to do Maverick's job because there's no chance of getting shot whilst it's detonating. You're 100% guaranteed to get the hole open, whereas if you're playing Maverick, there's a chance you'll die before the hole opens. So then you can argue, no, this is actually too strong because it's kind of, you know, taking that Maverick spot away because you're doing it in a much safer and much easier way. It's a very, very interesting situation here because I can't really remember the last time where there's actually been a sort of teamwork, sort of operator matchup that has actually left a result like this, where it's actually kind of hard to debate whether it is fair or unfair, and also to the point where a game designer has actually said that, well, yeah, the game is actually working as intended. It's not like they went out of their way to make sure this happens, but the way it is happening how the game is supposed to work. But they said they will monitor it if it becomes too much of an issue and it isn't very balanced, and they'll see how it goes. They'll try and remove it. But yeah, it's just so interesting because there's both split. You know, I've gave both sides of the opinions, whether this is fair or unfair. Like I said, I'm personally split on it. Yes, I think this is very cool. Yes, I think it does use a decent chunk of utility, so you could call it fair. You know, that much utility for a hole that you can't even enter, as far as I'm aware, that you probably won't be able to get through. It's also electrified, so you'll still take damage for it. You're also very prone to getting shot when you know, go close to it or try and enter it, and you've already used a third of Ace's utility and half of Osa's. Is that a good trade-off for such a small hole? But is it also fair that the defenders are, you know, bringing a Cade and it's still getting opened by Ace when Cade is meant to counter Ace? It is a very, very interesting argument, and the fact that stuff like this is happening in year 6 of Siege, it makes me so excited to play this game because it's still so interesting that brand new synergies like this are still popping up in the game even 6 years in. You know, you think by now in most games you've known everything, yet even just adding one operator can change everything up. That's why I love this game so much, and will never stop loving this game until the day they stop, you know, releasing content for it. So yeah, I just wanted to make this video to kind of, you know, see what everyone's idea is on this whole thing. Do you think this is fair? Do you think it's too strong for attackers? Do you actually think, hey, it's not that bad, they're using a lot of utility and you could already do this before with Maverick, so, you know, it's just another way, why not? Or do you think that this is extremely unfair for the defenders and this should not be allowed to happen because, you know, why should Ace be able to open a wall that's got a Cade charge on it? You know, that shouldn't happen. But yeah, if you're going into ranked anytime soon, I recommend using this. Like I said, it's not an exploit, it's not a glitch, it's not something that you're going to get banned for. It's a proper working mechanic that this game is supposed to do. So, you know, give it a try, see how you feel about it. Maybe it's going to happen to you when you're playing on defense. Go give this a try and do let me know your thoughts if you think this is something quite good for the game, or you think, yeah, maybe it's quite cool but a bit too strong. I realize I have made this video quite long, and yeah, so sorry about that. I just really am passionate about this, and I think this is something so cool that I really want to start a discussion about. And yeah, hopefully you guys find this as interesting as I do. So yeah, please do let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about this. Drop a like on this video if you did enjoy, dislike if you did not. Yeah guys, have an incredible rest of your day. I love you all. Shall catch you all later. Peace.